Hello, everyone. This is Molly Gordon. Welcome to another Wholeness Hangout. I host these every month on the second Friday of the month to explore the implications of the essential, fundamental, innate wholeness of human beings, to look toward creative potential, to look at the relationship between thought and feeling, to look at how we create our experience, and to have a great time with some wonderful friends. Today, my friend Terrie Upshur-Lupberger is here. I met Terrie, 15 years ago.
When we were much younger.
Right, maybe even 16 years ago. I actually heard Terrie speaking at an International Coach Federation convention or conference. And then I got to know her more when I trained with the Newfield Network graduate coaching program. And at the time, Terrie was their CEO. Terrie is a master certified coach. She has trained coaches. She still does train coaches. And she works at the intersections of leadership and coaching to elicit her clients' greatest potentials. Through her writing, coaching, and teaching, Terrie supports clients to develop new perspectives, practices, and behaviors. She's been coaching and contributing to the profession since 1995. As I said, she was CEO of Newfield for 9 years. She's a former board member of the International Coach Federation and has been a member of the ICF Credentialing Committee since 2002. She's a contributing author to 2 books on coaching, A Coach's Guide to Emotional Intelligence and The Handbook of Knowledge-Based Coaching. And she's presently writing an ebook for coaches on how to develop practices for clients that will help them break through their perceived limitations. Earlier in her career, Terrie was a federal manager for 12 years and a partner in a consulting firm working with IT professionals. Her varied organizational experience, combined with studies in human potential and philosophy, have resulted in a unique worldview and approach to working with clients that helps those clients have greater impact with more ease. So, woohoo! Hi, Terrie.
Hi, Molly.
This particular conversation had its roots in a phone call Terrie and I had, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, maybe a year ago. We hadn't spoken in some time, and Terrie reached out and said, let's catch up. And when she said, what are you doing, I kind of gulped. Because what I was doing and am doing is, in some regards, and today part of what we'll talk about is in what regards, a departure from the classical coaching that I was trained in. As a coach, I have learned to help my clients examine how they're perceiving the world, how they're thinking about the world, how they're creating their experience, and manipulate, manage, change, assess, analyze, revise, reframe that. And over the last few years, I've been looking less at the content of what people are thinking, what I would call a horizontal dimension, and more at the vertical dimension, and that's toward the, really, when you think about it, remarkable phenomenon that we think. And that our experience is coming from whatever we're thinking moment to moment. So I ventured this to Terrie, kind of like feeling, you know, like the coaching renegade, and she said something more or less along the lines of, me too. And because we've both been in the profession, Terrie since '95, me since 1996, we're both involved with the certification training and certification and credentialing of coaches, and hold the values and standards of the profession dearly and have a lot of respect for them. I thought it would be great to have a conversation about how our understanding of the role of a coach is evolving, and what we see is changing in our own practices and how the profession may or may not change. Now, for those of you who are watching this on the Google Plus page, there is and I'll pop over there right now, you can comment or ask questions on that page. So I'm just going to type something in real quick to show you what I mean. Under the Hangout window, there's a comment box, so go ahead and use that because we'd love to hear from you as this conversation progresses. So, Terrie.
Big topic here, you know?
Well, I know about you that you like small conversations.
Right. Love what you're wearing, Molly. Looks great.
So when we talked 6 months, a year ago, and I kind of made my confession that I was helping clients look more toward the phenomenon of thought than to the content of your thinking, that appeared to resonate with you. And I'm curious from your point of view what you're seeing and how you're thinking about coaching is changing.
Okay, wow, where do you start? Yeah. So first of all, whatever we talk about, I just want to remind all of us that we're exploring. You know, it's not like we have the truth or a new version of the truth, or like I really am in this question, truly. And when we talked, what I remember was this, and I still have it, this feeling of what am I really doing when I'm coaching? And can I still call it coaching? So my own training, not as a coach, but more as, you know, I've been following lots of different spiritual paths. I've always been interested in that which is beyond our vision, you know, what beyond the reality that's put in front of us. I've always been interested in that. And so I've studied lots and lots of different traditions. And here's my ultimate dilemma, which is, on the one hand, the coaching conversation doesn't have to, but likely does and can, keep us at the level of thinking, of thought form. When the spiritual traditions say our aim, our ultimate place is beyond thinking, right, is beyond thought form. So that's sort of the dilemma that I've been sitting in. You know, on the one hand, like you said, I help people sort of manipulate their reality, and they usually start with, I want a goal. There's something in the future that if I have it, a thing, an experience, a person, a relationship, I'll have happiness.
Right.
And that's such a, I think that's more of an illusion than truth. And yet, you know, we charge our clients lots of money to sort of think that someplace in the future they're going to be happier, more fulfilled, more satisfied. And it's a paradox, right? Because yes, they are, and at the same time, we have this sense, this notion that there's so much more beyond that. So I don't know if I'm making any sense. Language is challenging here, right? It is.
It is. And I guess, and you're pointing at something that's central to what to the questions I'm asking myself, and one of the things you're pointing to is this notion of, do external accomplishments, achievements, and events make us happy? And I would say, well, actually, not possible. That in any given circumstance, different people will have different responses. Even I, in the same circumstance, on different days, at different times, depending on what I'm thinking and on my emotional state, I'm going to have a different experience. So my bank account can't make me happy or sad. Whether or not I get my certified coach credential renewed or not can't actually make me happy or satisfied. My thinking about that phenomena is what makes me happy or satisfied. And that it seems to me that thinking about happiness and satisfaction in terms of the future is just like, that makes my brain sizzle. Like it goes,
but that's how we've got it set up. You know, that's how most human beings have it set up.
It is.
Right? There's some place in the future that I want to get to that I think's better than where I am now, and therefore let me hire a therapist, a coach, a consultant, a whatever to help me get there because there's better than here.
Right.
And on the one hand you go, well, of course. And then on the other hand you go, no.
Right. Well, so in what way can you still go of course? Because I can't go there at all anymore.
Well, here's where I'm at right now. I think that one of the most essential requirements to be a great coach and human being is the ability to hold a paradox, which are two opposing truths. You know, a paradox is this is true, and up on the opposite side, that's true at the same time. So it's opposing truths. So where I go is in the relative, you know, in the relative, yeah, life is sort of set up as a human being that we have goals and we have futures and we want things and right? So that's how it appears to all of us. So I don't want to dismiss that because that is how it appears to us.
Yes.
So I want to help people address that while at the same time bringing in the idea that's the relative perspective. There's also the absolute. You know, there's a lot of different ways to speak about it in the spiritual traditions, but there's like the absolutes, the absolute truth of what we are beyond our thinking, beyond our thought forms.
Right. Right.
So it's both, I think.
Yeah. Yes. In the way I think about it these days, the way I think about our relationship to the future and to creating things is that there is something in the nature of life that is inherently creative, and that as human beings we have the opportunity to participate in the phenomenon of creation.
Yeah.
We get to make shit up, which I think is amazing.
Right, yay! That's one of the benefits, right, of being human. We get to make it up.
And that comes with some really positive feelings and experiences that promote it. It's almost, I'm thinking, like evolutionarily, there's a bias built into our system toward creating, and that bias is built in because it feels good and it feels right. So I think that helping clients to create stuff, to make shit up, is an honorable, valuable, and very worthwhile thing to do. I just don't think that their success or failure in a given venture is what's going to make them happy.
Right.
I think it's being connected in the present moment to our human capacity to make shit up that creates the experience of happiness, not the future result.
Yeah. And you're pointing to an interesting distinction. So you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned this word or if I made it up as you were talking, but emergence, like one of the ways to look at what we do is allowing what wants to emerge to emerge. That's a different way of being with a client and being in the world than directing, pushing, forcing. You know, I want the promotion because that's what I think I should have, right? Because that's what's next for me, versus allowing what wants to emerge, which is, I don't even want to be in this field anymore. I don't want to be in this industry. I want to go out and do something completely different, or, you know, whatever wants to emerge. And I don't think as human beings we're very good at listening to what wants to emerge.
Why do you think that is?
Wow, that's a deep philosophical question. Yeah, why is that as human beings that we're not? One of the reasons, I think we're fairly disconnected as human beings between like our intellect and our body.
Mm-hmm.
I think our body has tremendous wisdom, and you know we're a pretty heady society. We go around kind of making decisions from the neck up. You know, and everything is cognitive and intellectualizing and analyzing, and we're pretty disconnected. And I think there's so much wisdom in our body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why did that happen? You know, who knows, right?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But certainly our history as human being has led us to a point where we're fairly disconnected.
Right.
So I'm wondering if we had more access to the somatic sense, you know, probably everybody listening's heard of that word, you know, somatics, and it just refers to the body. Soma is referring to the body. So I think there's an inherent wisdom in our body. There's an intelligence. There's a knowing of this is probably a better decision than that is for me, but we override it with our privileging and preferencing our intellect.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've been trained to do.
Sure. Sure.
So it got me thinking about, you know, in our profession, are we helping people, supporting them, creating a field or a space where what wants to emerge can emerge, or are we doing something different? And what should we be doing?
Right. What occurs to me is that if I think that my well-being and happiness are coming from external events and accomplishments, then I'm highly motivated to manage and control what those external events and accomplishments are.
Mm-hmm.
And that in a heady society, I'm going to use my personal thinking to try to make things happen. If I don't think that my well-being is coming from the outside, that relaxes. And it seems to me that then I have more access to a greater intelligence, which, as you say, might come in to some extent through somatic experience, through different kinds of intuitive experience, sudden insight, inspiration, flashes of insight. But as long as I think that the externals can make me happy or sad, I'm going to have a pretty fierce grip on them.
Right.
And that, in my experience at least, when I'm trying to control things, my creative intelligence shuts down and my intuition shuts down.
Yeah. 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 And so then let's take it into coaching. Imagine you've got a client that says, you know, in your initial session, you know, what I want is for you to help me. I'm thinking of a client I have right now. I want you to help me prepare myself for taking over the director's position. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what do I need to learn? How do I need to interview? What do I need to say? And that's great, right? I want to help that person do that. And at the same time, I can see that so much of his worth is riding on him getting this. Mm-hmm. So how do I introduce that? And should I as a coach, right? Is that my agenda?
Right. Yeah, and absolutely. Absolutely. In the tradition of coaching that we're trained in and train others in, I guess the should I introduce that depends on it always depends on what serves the client's agenda, but the question that comes up for me is which agenda?
Right. Yeah.
You know, is it my agenda to get this promotion, to get this directorship? Is it my agenda to be a happy, successful person? If I interpret that as a bigger agenda of happiness and success, then it does seem to me that it's my job to at least inquire into how the client is constructing a definition of success and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Because how they construct that determines how they experience it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And then it even goes beyond that. So I just heard this the other day, so I haven't thought too much about it, except it really grabbed me. And the person I was talking to said that coaching might be privileging or preferencing the individual over the collective, over the collective.
Mm-hmm.
That there's so much attention in a coaching engagement
Mm-hmm.
on the I, the me,
Yep.
that's going to do something in order to create a different future, that we're missing the possibilities of collective solutions, right? The focus is so much on the individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you go, well, what's the individual anyhow? Like, what is the self? And
Right.
Who is the self for coaching? Which I know gets really philosophical, but I love that.
Absolutely.
But
exactly.
I love that anyhow.
Exactly. I mean, so many times I have this experience as a human being, and I have clients locked into this all the time, where we think that we are a certain static something. Molly is this way and always will be, when actually, in my understanding, I'm part of an infinitely larger creative potential, and I've had this happen in my life. I remember one day coming home and saying to my husband, Miles, that I was going to buy a wetsuit and start swimming in Puget Sound with a group and train for triathlons. And you have to understand that for 30-some years of my life, I had zero athletic interest. And then for the next 15 or 20 years, what athletic interests I had was all basically personal and individual fitness. And I said to him, what do you think? And he said, what I think is I need to find Molly Gordon. It's like, who is this? We think of ourselves as having a certain static personality and a certain static way of being, and in fact we don't.
Well, and if you take it even further, some would say that Molly and Terrie, it's just thought.
Yes.
Like, Molly doesn't exist except as an intellectual construct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So,
yep. I could go there.
Right? So what is the self? And when we're coaching an individual, what are we coaching? If that individual is really just a thought form, a construct. So yeah. Yeah. And where this, so for the most part, I can fit this into coaching. And sometimes I struggle with it. For example, one of, at least in my belief system, one of the ways that we can access what wants to emerge or access that place beyond our thinking, our constant thinking and making stuff up, is silence.
Yes.
Right? Whether your practice is meditation or prayer, but it's the silence. And that's another thing that, as you human beings, at least in our Western culture, we're not really trained to do, we're not encouraged to do, we're not supported to do, and yet I think it's essential. So, going back to coaching, if I believe that silence is so essential to help people get in touch with kind of more of their truths, then as a coach, do I encourage that? Do I suggest it? Do I bring that into when it's not even on their radar screen?
Right, right. So what's the role of the coach? And this was part of actually the introduction I read for you, that one of the things you're exploring is what is the role and the methodologies for coaches of designing practices for clients.
Right.
And when do we prescribe or recommend?
Yeah, yeah. And truthfully, I can't think of many coaching relationships I've had where I didn't at one point suggest some kind of silence practice.
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully, I can't. It just now whether they do it or not, that's up to them.
Sure.
Right. But I just started with a new client and who's so trapped in this non-stop being run by her thoughts, assessments. Oh my gosh, it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. And so in our first session, I recommended her to watch one of the new TED videos by Pico Iyer. He's written a little book on stillness.
Okay.
And so I just suggested that she might want to look at that, you know, look at the TED video or read the book and just see what shows up for her. You know, what's her reaction when she listens to that? I do that a lot. I'll recommend, you know, things like that for my clients just as a way to introduce it to see if that resonates for them.
Right, right. Now, have you talked to her since?
We've emailed because we're getting ready to have another one, and she said she wrote a short note in her email, which is loving the video. So I haven't talked to her.
Okay.
But, you know, but got the email, love the video. So we'll see. So
I quickly Googled that. I'll add that to the comments on the event page later on. Yeah, I used to engage more actively in practices for quieting my thinking, because I do think that slowing down the flow of thought and quieting thinking is really important. There's either a lot of personal thinking and working, and I think of it about as if I'm building a small box in my mind and then scurrying around inside that box to solve problems that I'm making up in that box. Or I can relax my thinking, the walls of the box start to dissipate, and I'm participating in some larger intelligence that not only has different answers, but where the problems can dissolve or morph into entirely different entities. So I used to try to quiet my thinking. What I've come to see for me is that as I really understood that thought is creating my experience, I stopped taking my personal thinking, it stopped seeming so significant.
Yeah.
Like, it's always going on. I don't expect it to stop, and I don't think it's a problem. I think it's wonderful. It's how I create experience. I want that. As long as I'm on the planet, I want that. But it's not compelling to me anymore. And so about 80% of my thinking is like the kraal on the CNN screen, and I don't have to read it.
Right.
And it's just phenomenal how much quieter it is in here, and it's not the result of a practice. It's the result of an insight into the nature of thought.
Mm. Although I would say maybe it's a practice of lightness. I mean, the practice is the ticker tape's going across the bottom, and your practice is not to pay attention to it.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's something to that. And exactly. So I'll notice myself starting to get spun up about something.
Right.
And that just no longer occurs to me to be a good investment of my emotional energy. Yeah. So the spinning may continue to go, but I don't seize on it. I don't try to solve it or resolve it or figure it out. I know that if I just let the kraal go, it will take care of itself. And meanwhile, I'm in the main screen of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I love that. I love that as a metaphor. And I go, wow, so imagine if we could bring more of that to people.
right,
You know,
right.
wouldn't that be something? And you mentioned a word as you were talking about spaciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think maybe what we're doing is bringing more spaciousness to people, right? So they're not so crammed, like you said, with the because we're always thinking. We're never not thinking, right? I mean,
Right.
when are we never not thinking? Maybe when we're sleeping, but then we're dreaming. When are we never not just the constant chatter? And so, maybe what we can bring as coaches is more spaciousness.
I
So
think
maybe
it's
there's
huge.
more silence between the thoughts, like you, the ticker tape's going, but I'm not hooked. I'm not triggered by
Mm-hmm.
what's going across the bottom of the screen. So it's quieter.
Yeah. Now, I think that's very true, and that we can bring spaciousness both in terms of where we point our clients' attention and what we teach, if we step across that line and teach, and I do these days, and also in the session itself by the use of silence and not needing to ask questions or answer questions as quickly as I used to think I needed to do.
Right. And then one more that occurs to me is and asking the questions that cause pause.
Yes.
For example, one of the questions that I'll often ask is, what is enough?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a question that most of us have not considered. What's enough notoriety? What's enough money? What is finally enough?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those questions that I don't encourage people to answer quickly. No, really, be in a question that's going to take you a while to answer, if you ever answer it. But what finally is enough?
Right.
Right? Which is a question you go, oh, yeah, never, don't know.
Even what is success?
Yeah.
What do you think that is? And as you say, and what's enough? How will you know you get there?
What's enough success?
Mm-hmm.
You wrote one book, and we're just kind of habituated, as they say, to go for more, whatever the more is.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if you think about it, every message that we get from the media is that you aren't enough or don't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
You need that car, you need that facelift, you need that, you need something more.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, great coaching, let's challenge like you say, sort of the rules or the myths,
Mm-hmm.
that we're living our lives by.
It just occurred to me and I don't have the ICF's definition of coaching right in front of me, but if coaching has to do with human potential and releasing, supporting, expanding, facilitating human potential and development, then it seems that anything we do that connects people with their potential is a grand thing. But as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that how people define human potential could be vastly different. And how you measure human potential. Is human potential measured in number of directorships and millions of dollars in the bank? Or the way I think about human potential has to do with access to a creative force,
right,
where there's no particular defining limit on how that creative force gets expressed.
Yeah, as you were talking, it made me think of your axis, the horizontal line and the vertical line. So there's our potentials on the horizontal line, which is, my potentials to self-express and, rise to that C-suite or, be the best mom I could be. There's those potentials. But then there's the vertical potentials.
Yes.
Right? Like enlightenment, is that a possibility?
Mm-hmm.
Or transcending more and more my thinking and my the reality that I've constructed through my thinking. So there's the vertical potentials.
I think that's a very useful way to think about it. Am I trying to create more, expand potential in a horizontal dimension, one frame, or in the experience of being human altogether?
Yeah.
I just wanted to acknowledge Bobby Middendorf made a comment that my practice of not paying attention to the kraal may have been and is likely to have been enhanced by prior work on quieting my thoughts. And I've wondered about that. The thing that I haven't done, this outing myself, apart from multiple sporadic attempts at meditation over my lifetime, I have never succeeded in a regular meditation practice. The most I ever probably got was like 20 days strung together in a row. So I don't really think so much that it's a prior practice. I do think what I think facilitates my ability to not read the kraal is that I can recognize what quiet feels like. And I recognize what being ramped up feels like. And there's a way in which, without knowing exactly how I'm moving the switches, just like I can't describe to you how I lifted that cup. If I had to figure that out, I'd never get the cup lifted.
Right.
But I do know how to ramp up. And I can choose not to ramp up. And I can recognize what quiet and spaciousness feel like. And in the same way that I can lift a cup without knowing exactly how, once I realize that I know what those things feel like, I can activate the choice to do more or less of either.
Yay for you, because there's still times I get so hooked.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because me too. There are times, last weekend was one. I got so hooked for 2 days. I was just, the difference. So, I mean, we're in a human experience, and sometimes that just has me by the throat.
Yeah.
What I can do is not get hooked about being hooked.
Right.
And also to really have confidence that whether it takes 2 days or, God help me, 2 weeks, it's going to resolve itself if I don't get in there and get my hands on it and wrestle with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
But absolutely, I get hooked.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't. You know, I've expressed this, I think, on previous hangouts. I think that it's really unfair that spiritual insight doesn't give us a free ticket. And I can just hold up my pass, say, I've seen the thought-feeling relationship, and I don't want to feel pain anymore. Thank you. It's just like, but that's not the way it works. We're still in a human experience.
We're in a human experience, exactly. And it's a both and, right?
It is. And as one of my clients remarked, you know, we wouldn't want it any other way. You know, it'd be like going to the movies and never having anything happen to raise your blood pressure in the movie or get your heart beating fast. It's like, hey, I paid my money. I want the whole experience. And It's nice to know I'm safe in my seat, no matter what's going on.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. You know, as you were talking, the other thought that occurs to me, and I'm almost wondering if these aren't, gosh, what would we call them? Postulates, tenets of what we're talking about, is this notion of impermanence. You know, everything is impermanent. Everything. In the relative world, right? It's all impermanent. And, you know, that's another kind of, I want to say, myth that we human beings sort of live with, is that we're not living aware that we are impermanent. Yes, I know one day I'll die. Yes, I know one day I'll, transition, whatever your term. One day, someday, I know I will. But how different would it be if I was in this moment so aware of my impermanence? Would that then change my direction, my relationship to the world and others, to self, right? So that's another thing that I wonder if we aren't supposed to, or isn't useful to bring into our coaching.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it is. We are impermanent. Does that change how you want to move through this lifetime?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for us in the Western world, and I can only speak to the Western world because I'm not Eastern. In the Western world, death is something that happens later and it's hidden.
Right.
We hide it away. So how would that change our relationship to what we're seeking if we were very present to the impermanence of it all?
Right. It's an interesting question, and many of in the Western world, when we do engage the idea of death, it's often in a frame like live today as if it were your last, as though there's a hidden set of priorities, that if you knew your time was running out, you would live according to those priorities. And there's still a way in which I think that's missing the point that you're making.
Yeah. Yeah, and I only have inklings of it. It's not like I live my life as if in every moment I get the impermanence of everything. I have glimpses of it. Like when I don't get something that I want, I can go to that, oh, I'm disappointed, and what's wrong with me that I didn't, and I'm all that sort of thing. And then I can go, well, even if you got that, you're still impermanent. Mm-hmm. And that thing is it's all impermanent. So I have glimpses, but I can't hang on to that either. I think my curse is I get these glimpses and insights, and then I go back to living just my human experience. And
exactly. Exactly.
That's the bliss and the curse at the same time.
The good news and the bad news.
Exactly.
What popped into my mind was how when I got my car, Blanche, 8 years ago, I used to wash her every week, and having her look nice was a value that was easy to live, and I didn't even think about it. And now Blanche is lucky if she gets washed every month or two, and the scratches come up, and it's kind of like when you get a new car, recognizing that the attachment you feel to it now is going to lessen as soon as it's had its third scratch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we haven't talked much about attachment, but that's another kind of tenet in all of this is practicing lessening our attachment to outcomes and experiences and events.
One of my mentors, George Pransky, has a lovely distinction between investment and involvement.
Mm.
And he distinguishes and correlates them. He says involvement is the degree to which I'm engaged in the game of life, and I show up and I play, and it's a contact sport and I'm fully involved. Investment is the degree to which I'm attached to the outcomes of that game, moment to moment. That when we are highly invested and highly involved, we live what some would say is the classic successful Western life.
Mm.
And high anxiety, high tension, high blood pressure.
Right.
And that if we want to not feel the stress and strain of high investment, if we pull back on involvement too, life loses its flavor and its seasoning. And you become apathetic. If you're not invested or involved, it's like, oh well, whatever. So ideally, we come to live more invested, more involved, and less invested. We can unhook them. So I don't have to get uninvolved or unengaged in order to protect my heart or my feelings. I can play full out and stay fully engaged in the game of life with somewhat less attachment or investment to the outcome.
Oh, I love that distinction.
He uses a lovely metaphor. He says, imagine that you're, because you are so attractive and interesting a person to be around, you've been approached by the owner of a casino. And the casino owner says, Terrie, because you are so attractive and interesting, I would like you to work for me. And what I'd like you to do is come in every evening. I'll give you $500 in chips. You play, actually, I think the amount is probably bigger. I'm a small time. You get $5,000 in chips. Play your heart out. Have a ball. Don't worry about it. Win or lose. At the end of the night, I'll give you $500 and you can go home, no matter how you performed at the tables.
Sounds fun.
And he says, you know, that's really life, that there's this underlying okayness in the simple fact that we're human. That's our $500 a day. And then we can gamble, we can play, fully involved on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. And at the end of the day, we still get our $500. And that, to him, is involvement without an undue investment.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I think it's a lovely, lovely little story.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's wonderful. I have this, for lack of a better word, a mantra saying that a quote I heard when I was studying a particular tradition, and he said something similar. He said, here's the key to life: into the din of battle. So we fully engage into the din of battle, whatever that is, and keep your heart at the lotus feet of the Lord, whatever that is for you, the universe. And that's sort of like my mantra is fully into the din of battle. Go for it, whatever that is. And can you keep how I interpret that is, can I keep myself centered and open and connected and allowing what needs to emerge, and not getting hooked, right? Yeah. So into the din of battle, but keep your heart at the lotus feet of the Lord.
Ooh, that's a beautiful, beautiful.
Isn't that lovely?
Yes.
For those of you who want to know where that came from, there was a Jesuit priest named Tony DeMello who died back in the late 70s, and his work is incredible.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
He is good. He is good. You know, you may have heard that the Seahawks were in the Super Bowl recently.
Yeah, I'm a Bronco fan, so I know all about the Seahawks.
Well, I have most of my life not been a football fan at all. In the last couple of years, I've gotten excited because of the Seahawks. And to such an extent that while I was just taking a walk a couple of days before the Super Bowl, I realized that I was thinking about the Super Bowl. And that was one of those, who took Molly Gordon? You know? And who did they put in her place? And of course, they lost the Super Bowl in the last 19 seconds. And to me, that experience was so fun. I had so much fun watching that game. I was so engaged, so involved, and I was so okay and knew that they were okay when they lost. And I'm not saying I wasn't disappointed. I was crushed. It was horrible. Sure. But there was a way in which even that was fun, because it was part of experiencing the game of life. And I wouldn't have wanted to not care. I wouldn't have wanted to not watch the game in order to avoid disappointment. So it's not about getting above and outside of life, but to find a way to be fully engaged and at the same time know that you're whole and okay. Yeah. I love that. Heart at the lotus feet of the Lord.
Yeah. Isn't that lovely?
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. So my eye just fell on the word neuroscience over in the corner of my screen, and just wondering if anything pops for you about that, and it doesn't have to. It's just totally random association.
You know, I'm interested. I'm very interested, and I just have heard snippets, right? I'll read something or I'll hear a speaker, and I know it's gaining a lot of popularity, and more in coaching as well. And so I'm really interested. And I was listening to, I'm going to screw this up, there's a phenomenal speaker. He's done TED Talks. His name is Sean Aker, and he's written a couple of books on happiness.
Right.
And I just took a long flight back from the East, and I was listening to his book on the plane, and I can't remember the name of it, so I apologize. It's the most recent one. And a lot of neuroscience, and the thing that I remember most is he said we're exposed to like 4 billion bits of information or 4 million bits of information in a second, and our brain can only handle like 40. I mean, the statistics are amazing. Mm-hmm. And so as human beings, how have we trained ourselves to what we're going to pay attention to?
Yes.
And so for me, that's a fascinating connection with coaching, right? So can I, like the ticker tape, right? Like the kraal going across the screen, yes, can I help my clients, number one, become aware of what information they're picking up, and is there some ties to neuroscience there? And then how can I help them shift that so it serves them better? So that's what occurred to me when you said neuroscience. Yeah, I'm really interested, to the point where I'm thinking maybe I'll go get another degree in neuroscience. So we'll see. But it's fascinating what they're finding.
It is. It is. And of course, there's the physical, material dimension of the brain and the neurology of the body, and then the spiritual world of the mind, and how those connect. And where, as coaches, we have a role in the development of either or both is a very intriguing question.
Yeah. So, because we were trained in one of our trainings is in the ontological approach, it asks the question, what does it mean to be human?
Right.
What constitutes us as human beings? I think that's a fundamental question if you're going to coach, is that you are in that question of, I'm coaching a human being. I have a human being in front of me. What constitutes us as human beings? Mm-hmm. And so I think neuroscience is another modality or another interesting path for us to consider. Well, what does it mean to be human beings? So I've got the mind, and the mind is doing these things, and I'm processing all this data, and I've got access to this much when I'm getting this, receiving this much, and so what are the consequences, right, for us as human beings that I think neuroscience is going to be revealing? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's still all thought form.
Exactly where I was going.
It's still all thought form, right? Yeah. So what is that beyond the thought, the thinking?
Right. I was just starting to wonder, Terrie, as you were talking, I thought, I wonder when if neuroscientists were to come at their field in the context of understanding how thought creates experience, how would the questions they ask be different? And I have no clue. But
and what's in the gaps of the thinking, which is where I think there's more information and access for us is in the silence, is in the gaps.
Exactly. Because there's not, the human brain is an amazing computer. Huger, apparently, than any computer we have so far. But even so, it's a limited physical computer. For us to pull out of all of the data and experience and potential coming in at any moment, and to try to logically and deliberately and consciously sort is not only not practical, it doesn't work. It doesn't seem to be how insight happens and how discoveries are made. I need to find the citation for this survey, but I understand that they surveyed Nobel laureates about where their ideas came from. Mm. And the top 3 places consistently were vacation, shower, and driving.
Hmm.
You know, we don't pull the best information and make the best decisions from thinking harder about them.
Yeah.
It's from relaxing our thinking that,
Yeah.
that we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. At least that's how we're seeing the world right now, you and me.
Yeah, as far as I can tell right now.
Right. We have to be careful. We don't have it either. Right? It's not like we got it, right?
That's right. That's right. Oh, dear. What fun. Well, let me see. What's coming up right now?
What do you think your listeners are caring about?
That's a really, really, really good question. What I know when one of the themes that seems to resonate a lot with people that I can tell from my Facebook page and my e-zine and other hangouts is that I think people are ready to get off the self-improvement bandwagon or merry-go-round.
Yeah.
And that's been emerging for me for maybe 10 years. I remember coining the phrase, just say no to serial self-improvement. And what I'm coming to see is that, and what seems to be resonating with folks, is the idea that we don't have to work on ourselves to improve ourselves, that it's more a getting out of the way so that the self can unfold and develop. I like that.
I like that. And that goes back to the very first thing we talked about, which is coaching is in danger of, you know, overemphasizing the self-improvement part. Like, why isn't it community improvement or collective improvement, or that I will naturally, the best in me will naturally emerge in communities where we're what's the word, nurturing, yeah, I don't quite have the word, but there's maybe we're overemphasizing the self in our coaching.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. Both the idea of the self and the individual self. That's really intriguing.
And maybe this conversation, so this isn't to dismiss coaching or in any way, because it's what we do, but I think we need to take a serious look, not significant, but serious look at how coaching wants to emerge too, right? So coaching has been on the scene, what, 20, 25 years, probably even before that, before we had the name for it. And just like the world, you know, consciousness is emerging and things are shifting, maybe our practice is shifting too.
Absolutely.
So what wants to happen from coaching is shifting.
Absolutely.
And we're paying more attention to the collective space and less on the individual self-improvement space. I don't know.
Very intriguing. Good questions. Good questions. Well, Terrie, for people who want to follow up with you, where would folks find you?
Probably my website's the best place.
Okay.
It's terrieupberger.com.
All right, and I'll put that down here. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
And do you do a newsletter?
No.
No? Okay.
No. I try. I would love to say I do a blog. I'm not even consistent with that. So
okay.
On occasion, I will write a blog.
You do on occasion, and what you write is very cogent. So I encourage people to check it out because I did. Terrie, thank you so much. This has been very intriguing and eye-opening, and we'll have to do it again and see where we are on another day.
Yeah, because there's a book that's been recommended to me that is supposed to dispel this notion of all the self-improvement. I can't recommend it yet because I haven't read it, but maybe we'll talk about that next time.
Okay, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Molly. And I hope for everybody who's listening, you know, you're just kind of provoked, right? What am I doing? And what is, that was the intention.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Not to have answers, just more questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Terrie.
All right,
Take
thanks.
care. Bye.
Bye.